Excuse your acronym again?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Think budget. Think budget.
Alright, welcome to the semifinals. We held the competition 2015. Congratulations to both teams that did this. On side government, we have Permata KSS. Side opposition, we have MCKK. My name is Mai. I'll share this round. To my left is Chuan Yang Lieutenant. To my right is Starship Midrun, who will be kind of listening. Before we start, please remind everyone to turn off their phones and put it on silent mode, to only exit or enter this room in between speeches, and to keep your discussions to an absolute minimum. On the motion that this House supports the use of pink poison, an endangered species, I to invite the Prime Minister.
Good job. 200 rhinos or endangered rhinos already dead this year in the hand of poachers in South Africa, and there is no going down. We think that we need to step up our game in avoiding this damage from happening as a whole. And we think that applying the poison into these endangered animals will deter and stop damage from happening within these situations. In my speech, on how does this improve the protection for these animals sufficiently, and secondly, why is it justified for endanger human safety to a certain extent to protect these animals, right? Before that, let's answer a few questions about debate. Firstly, how does these these types of pink poison, how are these pink poisons translated into public, or how do they perceive it? Firstly, we think that these rhinos are or these endangered animals, for example, rhinos, are discolored, or the parts of their body which are wanted for poaching will be discolored. Right? For example, these rhinos horns will be discolored as pink, as pink horns, right? So they will make the public. Secondly, in no way does it harm the endangered animal, so we don't think that it provides a sufficient harm to, for these animals to die in the end of the day, right? But thirdly, we think that these by the International Rhino Foundation as being progressive. So we think that it is being accepted by several organizations within status quo as an effective method. And we think that this proves that there has been public discussion or approval of this certain method into deterring poaching as whole. But that's another important question on this kills humans. We don't necessarily think it kills humans because the consumer harms include things like nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea. So it doesn't necessarily, or it will not kill the humans, right? It will not provide a much harm to kill these humans because it acts as a deterrence or to instill fear and for these individuals to learn a lesson, right? Said let's move on. But before that,
just so they're not poached for it.
No, because that's what poachers do. We don't want to do that. So we'll provide a method where it doesn't necessarily harm the endangered animal, but we protect it. We protect we protect the body of the endangered animal by not necessarily harming it physically, but providing a deterrence from the poachers from harming it. Right? What a weird question. But firstly, how does it improve the protection for animals? On the first level, let's analyze how do poachers operate. Poachers capitalize the vulnerability and weakness of these animals, right? Or how they are protected, or how vulnerable even though they are protected in assumed protected areas, right? So poachers particularly attack reserve parks or animal protection areas because they consist where they find these endangered animals a good profit towards them, right? A part of those endangered animals, they find it as good profit towards them. So these areas are these are the areas that need the most amount of protection to protect these endangered animals, right? Because they exist endangered animals, and these poachers focus on these areas to poach, right? So opposition needs to prove to us on why we should allow this vulnerability to happen to this, because status quo has already proved to us the reserve parks or protection areas are not necessarily working, so we need a method to do so. So opposition needs to prove to us why to and not step our game up to protecting them. Let's analyze our second level on how do you necessarily disrupt the poaching and protect animals by using this method. Firstly, we think that in poaching, or in the process of poaching and selling within market, there's three stages, right? Firstly, the poachers will kill animals, then they'll pass over the part of the animal to the distributor, and the distributor passes them to the consumer and want to buy that certain part. So these individuals exist within that illegal market, right? So when we and the process of poaching these animals as a whole, right? Because when there's a distributor, but the poachers find no business in poaching in the first place, right? Because now they will gain no profit. So let's answer the question on why do we stop. Firstly, we think that consumers will stop buying these products. Consider the fact that we already explained to you how these consumers will be aware of the fact that these rhinos are in fact infected, not infected, but they have these pollen upon them. So if they realize that this type of pollen hurts them, we are aware of the fact that they are affected to the first place. I mean, that's less money for these poachers. But secondly, we think that the market will become smaller, right? Because these poachers still face the risk of being caught by these protection officials, and secondly, secondly, we already the process of damaging the process of damaging these endangered animals is cut off, right? So when we cut off distributor, when we poison these individuals more aware, and basically these poachers are no longer interested in the act of these poachers are no longer interested in the act of poaching. So the conclusion is improve the protection of these animals because poachers are deterred, and we cut off supply and the market for illegal trade of these endangered animals. Look at my second argument, right? Why is this justified to endanger human safety? Firstly, we think that poaching directly affects the environment. That's the first reason, right? So the environment is important because these endangered animals are a significant value towards these type of countries, right? So they might be national heritage animals for this certain country. Local importance to protect these types of animals, and if we consider that these poachers do harm humans as well, right? So if direct harms the environment, then we should endanger human safety to protect it, right? Just like how the NSA spies on people for the greater good. Secondly, we think it's also a tantamount to murder because animals, to a certain extent, have rights. They feel, they have family, and people take them for granted, right? And we don't think that we should do so. So for all those reasons, we think that we are the only side that protect animals the best that we can, and we are the only side that can deter these poachers from poaching in the first place.
Prime Minister for speech. Now to invite the leader of
We don't think this is a debate to compare who gets harmed more, animals or humans, and it's not a debate to show to us the harmful effects of poaching and just tell us why poaching is bad, because that's not exclusively the benefits of your policy. We reject the characterization to say that poaching is a problem that we cannot solve, and we reject the characterization that are putting towards poaching. They're giving too much credit to poachers here. They have to prove to us why the alteration of the biological, like natural the natural traits of an animal, of a creature, of a human being is justified in any case, especially in your paradigm, right? So first of all, here are the battles I have before I move on to my substantives. First of all, he said he contextualized the problem to be like so dire, like 200 rhinos died. Wow. We say that's a mischaracterization from their side. We don't think that necessarily, because we have to analyze the trend here. The fact that the rate of death of rhinos have declined shows that there's a progressive and like positive trend towards combating the idea of poaching, right? But also we think at the very a large majority of these animals are still protected, are still alive and well. We don't think we should harm now with your policy. We don't see the justification for this policy. We don't see the dire need. Sit down. But also they talked about how assumption is that if it doesn't kill animals, then animals do not suffer from the pink poison that is injected to its animals. But we say these animals do suffer. We say the idea that you modify their own nature, but also the idea that they suffer the pain that they have to undergo through this process is one that is also illegitimate and one that is not one that we cannot accept. Sit down. But also they contextualize pink poison to be not poisonous. The biggest problem with the case, really make people dizzy. We think the deterrent effect is strong in your case. You know why? Because let's analyze the risk benefit calculus, right? the reason people take and consume things like rhino tusks and whatnot is for the benefit they get. For example, curing like skin cancer and whatnot. If the risk is only like getting dizziness, we see it's more probable that they take this risk, and like for the expense, for the trade-off of getting this benefit, we don't see a deterrence effect in your side, because if dizziness is the only deterrence you have, we say that's not necessarily the case. Even smoking makes you dizzy, but still people do it anyway. We don't say that nausea and being dizzy is one that is legitimate. Before I move on, yes.
It's scientifically proven that taking these endangered animals will not help cure the disease. That's why it's pushed by the state. That's why it protects endangered. Are you defending the consumerism of animals?
It's not whether these things actually work or not. It's not whether the products are actually something good or not. It's whether it's the intention of people. We say that regardless of what the state implies, regardless of the scientific bullshit that you throw at people, conservative mindsets will still say that, oh, if really strong and whatnot. We don't think that is a concern in our case. Also, let's analyze the burden that they have to prove and they failed to prove, right? And that's really disgusting to do. First of all, they didn't prove why status quo explicitly is not working. They didn't show it to you how there's progressive positive trend in status quo, but also exclusive benefit that outweigh any possible harm. We say this benefits that they say protection of animals is not one that is exclusive. We can create protection as well through our own policies, through external policies, sanctuaries and whatnot. We say external policies have not failed, and we don't see the dire need of your proposal. Sit down. Also, let's think about the policy for a while. You're injecting animals, you're harming animals, you're changing the biological nature of an animal so that that animal doesn't get harmed. That is similar to say, if you want to combat human trafficking, let's cut all the legs of every human being so that there's no use of human traffickers to human traffic anymore. We don't say that is like legitimate, that is fair, and we think this policy is disgusting and barbaric, right? We don't support barbaric policies unless. Sit down. Also, we think, like I already characterized how just because pink poison doesn't necessarily kill these animals, but we don't say that these animals don't get any negative ramifications from it. Say we do that characterization. But also you have to understand that now you set the narrative, you set the procedures, you set the standard that nature is one that is so low that human beings can just step on it and control everything. We are what nature are. We control everything that nature is. We can literally just change nature as how it suits us. We don't think that is one that is legitimate. We don't think that is fair. Also, it's sad but true. Sit down. It's sad but true that humans abuse animals all the time. But how do we counter this? How do we educate society to not like abuse animals, right? It's when governments take a hard stance to say animal abuse is wrong. We say that's a contradiction in the government stance. They say, oh, animal abuse is not good, but then animals modify the biological standards and the biological nature of these animals. We say that is not fair. We say that is not good. Why? Sit down. What happens when governments contradict their own stance? We say they lose their legitimacy in pulling and for animal rights, right? Protects animal rights. We say that the only legitimacy that government have is that they hold the moral high ground to say that animals deserve a lot of rights. But we say you lose that moral high ground in your paradigm. Government set a barbaric standard, like contradict their own stance. So what happens now is society naturally like do not support, not pull for animal right policies anymore, and animal abuses now are more likely going to happen because individuals on the ground are less likely to like actually opt into things like animal rights. So we say the trade-off here. Let's analyze the trade-off. If we want to sacrifice 200 rhinos for safety and for the security for a million of animals, for the possibility of animal right policies degrading and like being like no longer existent, we say go with the 200 rhinos death and not destroy all of animals and all of animal rights. Thank you.
invite Deputy Prime
Is a troop of soldiers in Kenya, armed by the Kenyan government to protect the last white rhino that Kenya has ever inherited. This is no necessity to protect animals within these countries. Side opposition cannot tell us we can't and don't need to protect these animals because they are called endangered animals for a reason. 200 rhinos lost could be 1/5 of the amount of rhinos that is left in existence. This means slow decline in the amount of poaching that happens, it's poaching happening nonetheless. We introduced an alternative that causes markets and demands for poaching to implode, for individuals to stop buying it, and that's how poaching can stop. Given that I've already proved to you that there is a dire necessity to harm consumers to an extent, because these are the last few animals that we have left, I'm going to move on to a few other things the side opposition tried to say. One, they made the absurd argument that individuals will continue to consume it anyways. Sure. But the point is, these are harms that are temporary and painful, but not permanent, because we don't want to kill you as an individual. That means we can cause extreme pain to a person, to nausea, towards diarrhea. I don't see why a person will continue to consent into it. Even if after the consumption of rhino powder, they realize that their cancer hasn't been resolved, meaning individuals will come into some level of realization, stay challenge their definition of what's right and what's wrong. Even if at its best we don't do much, it's still a minimization of the consumption that happens of rhinoceros, and it's a minimization of the consumption of elephant. I mean, that's still a win for us because they keep these animals longer for a longer period of time. But the second absurd thing is, it was biological alteration, the genome, how animals live life. I'm sure he didn't understand half things within his speech. If you already alter the way animals live for own protection, we tranquilize animals if it means we can inject them with immunity to protect them from diseases. We do this on a daily basis if it means we can prolong the life of an animal's existence. Are you against trying to inject animals with things that will cure diseases for them, because that's also an alteration of how animals live? It is the same principle, Madam Chair. We are altering them. In no way will it physically or mentally harm them, because at the end of the day, it prolongs the living length of a rhinoceros because no one wants to hunt it. But I see no psychological harm to how it can harm a rhinoceros. Its only difference, it will look pink now. What is the only difference towards the way the rhinoceros lives its life and the way it would have lived its life before? The only difference is it'll have 2 more years to live its life, because now individuals are less likely to poach it. So there is no physical harm, because if there was a physical harm, it would defeat the purpose of protecting a rhinoceros, and there is no psychological harm because the way a rhinoceros feels. So I'm going to move 2 things. One, how this emphasizes education through actions, how we can show individuals on the ground the extent that we have gone through to protect animals. But secondly, I'm going to expand a bit more on my Prime Minister's argumentation as to why is it fair to harm individuals, when do we do this already, and why have individuals already consented in this harm. So given that I've taken down their case, let's move into the first segment. One, how is this empower education through actions? We think campaigns and status quo cannot help change the behavior of how individuals on the ground think. Individuals know what campaigns are telling them, know what is being pushed forward to them within the message, but they just choose not to believe it. Individuals believe in their own philosophies and in their own beliefs. They don't think it's really a bad to go. The moment we start taking these actions, the moment we make these heavy investments into trying to protect these endangered animals, this is when we put some form of relevant awareness towards individuals on the ground. With individuals who fund these organizations and fund these illegal poaching centers, individuals think twice about what they are doing instead. And is this also of awareness as to why individuals are consuming this? Individuals consume this for philosophical and religious reasons. This can be disproven and statistical or scientific. We can disprove the way these things work, but if individuals on the ground choose not to believe it, there is nothing much that we can do. We can educate them to the actions that we put forward, and we can show them what they have been doing to the world. This is the closest that we will ever come into educating individuals who are belligerent as this. But secondly, and in worst case, what does this do? results into more awareness that could have never been triggered before. More individuals on the ground begin to believe what is happening to endangered species. More individuals on the ground create an environment is against poachers. What does this translate into? In a reasonable circumstance, things like more funding into the protection of these animals, because we recognize that there is only so much that we can do in protecting them. More organizations, NGOs, individuals who will outrightly try to fund it because they want to protect the last white rhinoceros, and they know how far we've gone in trying to protect them. But that also creates an environment, family members, relatives of individuals who are going to consume these items, educate them and advise these individuals on the ground, because the environment will discriminate individuals who opt into this model, and we think that that is a worth trade-off to make within status quo. The conclusion to the argument is simple. What if what we have been doing so far has close to no change or even that will not stop rhinoceros from becoming extinct. That will not stop unique species of animal from becoming extinct. We propose a new alternative and a new model, a model that educates individuals through showing them the actions that they have done. But secondly, why is it fair to harm individuals on the ground, individuals who are complicit in the extinction of the animals? What we've already proven to a large extent, animals already have rights, and it's already by the state. Already conclusive. We protect them, even though they aren't sentient. We do give them some form of rights, and we exercise the fact that we are superior towards them by protection. Secondly, we already harm individuals who consume into this. We find individuals in school who do buy these forms of powder, and we put these individuals to isolation in jail. We are only prolonging it because we think it's proportionate to the amount of damage that they are causing. Considering endangered species, we think it's proportionate that they employ a harsher punishment towards these individuals as compared to buying something of the lesser descent or something that could harm animals lesser. Meaning, considering we know that the damage is so high, we need to employ that higher level of punishment. And individuals consent into this damage, Mr. Speaker, because they are aware of the poison that is going around. Meaning, if they voluntarily take that powder, it's voluntary non-fit injuria. They consent into the harms that happen to them, and they consent into the horribleness that they will face throughout their entire lives.
I thank the Deputy Prime Minister for the speech. Now I invite Deputy Leader of Opposition.
So like government would live in a world where things are able to happen, where individuals who just generally like to poach can continue poaching, just they have to bear the consequences. They have to bear the consequences of being dizzy after consuming tusk powder. The other thing allowed to happen in circumstances is individuals to not be able to appreciate biological nature that will happen or evolution that took place millions and millions of years ago. In these circumstances, ladies and gentlemen, we'll tell you why it's excessively harmful for government to allow these two things to happen and for them to go with this policy. Let's start with a few things that we have to generally identify within this debate, what this debate should generally be about, right? This debate is really about whether or not like biological alteration is fair enough or protected, right? But instead of government have given much credit to poachers within this argument by saying that a lot of these early individuals have necessity to necessarily believe in, working as traditional medication. Therefore, we should allow them the still opportunity, but just make it a lot worse for them if they choose to continue. The problem with this argumentation is it disregards the ability for those Kenyan soldiers that Tisha tried to talk about in their speech to generally protect this one rhino. It is unrealistic to assume that individuals cannot, all of this rhino, if it's so little in quantity. The reason why this cannot happen is because there are too many rhinos out there to begin with. Given that that's the characterization of what rhinos really are, is it then fair for you to just generally biologically manipulate all of them and say that, oh look, all of them should then pick? In these circumstances, it's generally unfair, and that's exactly why the state should not comply to this policy. No, thank you, sir. But on this idea about consumer, how we want to put a stop to consumer to begin with, right? Again, I feel there's a mischaracterization within their case. So they first told us how it's a lot better for individuals to feel, so if you still want to consume, they should go on ahead. But obviously, this deterrence factor exists. We told you how consumers don't necessarily only use elephant tusks or rhino tusks for consumption. A lot of these things also revolve around the ability for them to decorate themselves with accessories like ivory. In these circumstances, how does then deterrence factor necessarily help these individuals? We tell you it's much more harmful. We tell you why poaching is going to be a lot more rampant within these circumstances. We're not willing to take that risk. But moreover, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a look at the most perplexing argument they tried to bring forth within the house. They tried to tell us that, oh look, fairness does not exist within status quo, therefore this policy must take place to necessarily educate the public. This is not the only way, or this is not the best way to educate the public for several reasons. The first of which is you strengthen the rhetoric that humans just naturally have the ability to do or make choices for animals because they are unable to make choices for themselves. We concede to a certain extent. Sure, zoos necessarily make places that are not natural habitat to allow animals to continue living. But the difference is humans are not supposed to generally put their hands in exactly what elephants should be. That's exactly why we don't cut off tusks of elephant just so they're not poached. We allow them to remain naturally fit, or generally how they're born, because that's the ability for them to exercise their rights. Even if they're non-existent or even if they're not recognized, we tell that the people on the ground should necessarily respect this ability for them to remain as animal as they were originally. Thank you. But more, ladies and gentlemen, how is it not necessarily important? Because we tell you how education or awareness just happens within status quo. And the reason is because rhetoric like having Kenyan soldiers protect a rhino is good enough to tell people that something needs to change. But more than that, these animals are already labeled endangered and individuals still go out and buy. It means they don't really care that these individuals or these animals are necessarily endangered to begin with. This just means that you shouldn't allow individuals to continue poaching just as long as they suffer consequences, but instead disallow them from poaching completely, because that will put a better stop to it. In those circumstances, we tell you it's way better for individuals to not even take the risk. In fact, they can't even get to the source in the first place. That's why sanctuaries are a lot better. Yes, sir.
So your response to whatever we said was that there is still some level of harm. Sure, some poachers will poach for animals that are being used as decoration. Some people will still suffer through the pain and consume this. At the end, doesn't that still mean we reduce the consumption of endangered species? And isn't that a positive thing, for this positive reason for this policy to continue?
Great. We'll tell you why exactly it's the opposite, right? Let's talk about the individuals who necessarily still want to opt into original tasks or things that are authentic in nature, right? Let's understand that these are individuals who feel like original task is severely limited under their house. Sure, on the upside to this, a lot of other individuals would not want to poach, or a lot of poaching would decrease. But also, the demand for authentic products or authentic ivory becomes extremely high as well. A lot of individuals within the community necessarily want to feel inferior or want to feel elitist by owning this form of property. This means that the demand for a lot of these things will still continue, but more than that, it will be a lot more rampant because a lot of individuals need to fix that overwhelming demand of original or authentic ivory to begin with. And the extreme harm to this is that even if you don't allow protection for the individuals, it is far more likely that you cannot allow all rhinos in the world to necessarily be injected, because that is unfeasible. But more than that, ladies and gentlemen, those rhinos who slip through the cracks and are able to be protected under your house will still really be detrimental with suffer the ill effects of poachers are going to look for them and take them down. Therefore, the ability for society to generally appreciate nature in this sense is also deprived. In those circumstances, how is it better for rhinos? In essence, we don't think they necessarily change anything. Poachers still exist, but more than that, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a look at the alternative that they tried to prove within today's debate. They said, why don't let's put in individuals, because it suddenly mean that they change or they stop stop believing in their religious and conservative mindsets. The problem with this, ladies and gentlemen, is that you don't necessarily poison people just to say that you can't do this. We tell you under our side of the house, it's far more important for government to take active stances in going around telling people that endangerment still happens. It's much more important for government to strengthen rhetorics that we're not allowed to necessarily handle or like manipulate biological standards of animals, because that's not what we do. And there needs to be sufficient respect for that. Only then can individuals necessarily believe that there's something needs to be respected in animal rights. Then only then individuals necessarily appreciate the fact that they shouldn't be buying ivory or shouldn't be buying rhino, because that's exactly what the state has continuously enforced. In those circumstances, it is far more believable for a person on the ground to understand that the state also remains stagnant on the stance that I not necessarily want to feel superior because I'm just taking something from a different animal. In those circumstances, it is far more realistic that individuals feel the excessive need to protect animals because the state is also doing so. In those circumstances, it's far more important to realize that it is actually playing an important role in protecting these rhinos instead of doing or making choices for them that were irrelevant, modify for them to stay rhinos. Ladies and gentlemen, side of opposition would live in a world rather live in a world without rhinos rather than live in a world with fake rhinos.
Wow.
The severity of poaching is unimaginable towards the survival of animals. It's time we brought proportionality to the table in defense of animals. It's time we target the biggest contributors towards poaching, the consumers. But most importantly, it's time to poach the poachers. Moving into my speech. In my speech today, I will have two main issues, and under those issues, several questions to answer. The first issue, will this improve the protection of animals? The first question under that, will this deter consumers? Because they don't believe that once consumers are hurt, if you take the rhino powder for medicinal value, but it acts directly opposite against medicinal value, then we don't see why, in hopes of curing your cancer, you would continue that. But it also harms the market when people are deterred, because when people stop buying these rhino horns, when they stop contributing towards the financial stability of poachers, then they also cannot continue acting towards providing jewelry of rhino horns or other niche markets that they want to put themselves upon. It cannot work if they are not strong enough to support themselves. And strength comes from money that's provided by the consumers. Therefore, the imperative is, in your side, people will keep taking it because we still have the assumption that we're just taking it enough. That's why we're not feeling the effects yet. Compared to us, where the diarrhea, arms, diarrhea, nausea, and severe pain. In our side, we at least manage to cause it to stop because poachers don't have enough an ability to act. Second question on this issue. No, thank you. Are current measures enough? No. In team opposition, they already concede the demand is very high, even with the current measures they have. So even though they have laws that poaching is bad, people still think poaching can kill illness or whatever they want to change their stance on. Therefore, we need to directly affect the consumers so that it stops. But even if their measures are enough, in Sean's speech itself, we say that these are the areas that are most vulnerable to poaching because they have your supply. They have your supply of endangered animals where the market thrives on. Everyone wants a rhino horn. Everyone wants tiger paws or tiger skins. Therefore, to increase the amount of protection we have, we increase deterrence as well. Even if these poachers get lucky and kill that rhino, he can't do anything with it because it's been poisoned. That's reducing his ability to make a profit. No profit, more deterrence. And finally, also, we don't want measures to only be dependent on human observation. As you think, it can slip through the cracks. We can't always have guards on watch. We don't always have perfect methods of guarding it and fencing it perfectly. Animals themselves as well. When you capture them, you don't need to wait for the soldiers to come with you. They already have the poison. It goes directly towards consumers, and they are killed or they are affected either way as having to apply the laws. So the laws are still applied. We can't enact it without capturing them. How do we make it better? How do we make the current measure better? Finding poachers is very hard.
Thank you. Finding poachers is very hard, as well as finding the consumers. In both sides, concede. Therefore, you have to answer the efficacy of their laws may always come into play. They have the laws, but how many consumers they have? They have the laws, but how many poachers are they stopping? The reason why is because they can't find them. They can't really target where and they'll act. Therefore, we need to have a measure that can cater towards being flexible around when the poachers will act and how the consumers choose to use these things. A flexible measure is one to adapt towards the situation. So even if we can't find poachers, the medicine still directly goes towards consumers and it will affect them. The laws that you have, we can apply them with this measure. We can apply them if we poison the animals because we will always be able to act. And the final thing on this issue. No, thank you, Anik, after this. Do we harm the beauty of animals? Maybe. The only person, according to team opposition, that's observing the beauty is people. So if people on your side determine how beautiful an animal is, we don't think that's being reflective of the party being hurt, the animals. If animals don't think their beauty is more important than their safety, then listen to the animals, not the people. We don't need people rioting on this because they want the rhinos to still be beautiful, to be protected. So protect your rhinos, protect them. But that's an argument against changing any biological feature as a whole. Don't dye your hair. Don't have cosmetic surgery. Because as a human, you're beautiful. For you guys. Next. Alterations, I'm joking. Alterations are based on necessity. So we don't alter the animals for the fun of it. We alter it because there's no other option. That's it's a trade-off. We'd be safer and more beautiful. And even if the poachers now start to target the babies because the babies aren't born with poison, there's something called doing it again. So we do it again, the baby is also poisoned, your only loophole is sealed. Before we move into the next issue, yes.
Conservatives feel that they should not poach because skin cancer doesn't stop. Is that an argument to say that poaching stop anyway?
Yes, poaching will gradually stop anyways if we... No, poaching will gradually stop. Poaching will gradually stop once we enact this, but it won't stop any... Your side has a blanket policy towards poaching. Your side has a blanket policy that it is bad. But people know that poaching is bad. They don't stop because it's profitable. So how do you make poaching not profitable? By taking away the profit, by taking away the consumers, by making sure the consumers have an incentive to not buy. Second issue, will this successfully educate the public? The first question under this, do humans really understand the importance of protecting animals? Humans are not supposed to kill animals, even if there's medicinal value, even if you feel some sort of comfort. Because I won't kill Sean so I can wear his head around my neck as a necklace. Therefore, we think any just in this team, but why humans still have some form of want to use animals is wrong. That's how we educate them. The only way we can educate them to increase the concern is to make sure we can simulate in some way how the animals feel. This simulation of pain comes when they are exposed to the very harms that they expose animals towards. When they can feel the pain of being nauseous compared to a bullet in the head, the pain of having diarrhea compared to having a gut cut out, but in still some way it makes them aware. That's increasing awareness on a direct measure. But even if it doesn't directly increase, I think people can learn through the increase of attention towards this. The International Rhino Foundation, Rhino Program of Protection. Because of this policy that directly targets human behavior, humans need to realize that they are the ones at fault. So it's not only the consumers, the poachers, but everyone that may be affected in this chain may come into this chain that can learn from this policy now. And the final thing on human authority over animals, just to clear up the confusion. Humans do not have authority over animals. But because of your humans, you've made them dependent on our protection. So we protect them to as much of an extent that we can to give them autonomy on their own, to give them the ability to roam freely without having to always be afraid of poachers.
Thank you for his speech. Now I'd like to invite
At the end of the day, 3 questions. Number 1, can your policy really combat poachers or not? Number 2, is it justified to gamble human lives to ensure survival of the endangered animals? Number 3, is the original physical of animals more important than the risk of being poached? Move on to the first question. Can your policy really combat poachers or not? We don't think so, because we have to examine the mentality of poachers and what they really want. Poachers are individuals that operate on profit base, Madam Chair, meaning to say that it does not matter what color the animals are, as long as there is demand on those animals, or as long as there is demand on animals to speak. Their policy makes the animal pig and dangerous to be consumed. But the problem is, their policy only work in a world where we assume all industries, like all industries with vested interest individuals, who stay quiet about it. Such existence of poison can always be nullified by groups of individuals who demand the poachers to go hunting. Meaning to say, they forget a part of individuals involved in this debate. The poachers are one, but the poachers are paid by demanding individuals such as leather product companies. As long as this kind of industry exists, demand exists, it is more likely that the counter method will be created to nullify the poison if they need to. Meaning to say, your pink poison can't really stop demand. But assuming and conceding that it works under your policy, now all leather product companies that look for skin no longer demand. Now all individuals that eat rhinos will no longer eat rhinos. We're still not okay with the use of pink poison. Why? Number 1, because of the modification of animal physical that goes against nature, which I'm going to explain in my third issue. But second, because your policy is not absolute. Not all animals can be injected. Meaning to say, some animals are left to be poached. Why is that harmful? Because victimize the left out animals. Poachers will now poach at higher rate, knowing that the state is trying to inject all animals they are hunting. The mental calculus that they would have now is they need to poach more before all these animals get poached. Therefore, the main stance that government took, which is to slow down poaching, is now counterproductive, because people will not slow down poaching. People will poach more in order to get all the animals before you inject them with your pink poison. I think that is harmful, Mr. Speaker. Meaning to say that even if your policy can save some animals, your policy at the same time make a lot of regulations counterproductive. Now, poachers don't really care about reserve forests for animals. They break all the law now. Why? It's about risk-benefit calculus. These poachers earn millions bucks money for some elephant horns. They don't really care about paying fines that you might provide in your world. Since the risk now will benefit. The conclusion to this issue is we can't simply take an action without really considering the consequences. Even if status quo, but they still want to continue everything in status quo, like fines, jail, taking away license, without them realizing that your policy worsens status quo even more and is counterproductive to status quo, because people don't really care about the laws, no longer care about respecting the forest, because all they want now is to push faster than government officers injecting those kind of things. We think this is harmful. We think this directly clash to just to slow down this poaching. But secondly, before I move on to the second issue, yes.
If you assume that we cannot protect every rhino, then how do you assume that you can protect these animals, because even you can't monitor them on your own? Isn't our policy still better?
Who is faster? We think, Madam Chair, you cannot simply say that these kind of poachers are going to stay quiet and become slower than what government can do. We think you're underestimating the kind of poachers that we have in the global right now. If 200 rhinos can die in South Africa, with 1,000 rhinos going to die under your policy because of your proposal. I think that's bad. The second issue is this: justified to gamble human lives to ensure survival of the endangered animals. We agree that having not really popular appetite of eating endangered animal is not right, and we will find our state trying to combat that. But can policy ensure that these weird individuals stop loving these endangered animals? Not really. You're trying to increase the supply, but not the demand. What really happens when supply is decreased are, number 1, prices go up, number 2, increase in demand. How is that harmful? You coerce these individuals to have to pay more for the animals to poachers. Poachers will be more likely to increase their activity, not slow down, because they know that if they can find any animals that these individuals want right now, they get happy for it. We think this also contributes to say your stance is not fulfilled, because you don't slow down poachers to make them even active and not only that, it's victimizing these individuals and not really helping them to change their appetite. And then this clash with King's idea of education and awareness to disprove all the belief they have currently. You know what? Rhinos does not help you. Can that happen? That can only happen if your policy can change the mindset. How do you change mindset? Sit down by making these animals dangerous to eat, dizziness and nausea. The problem is just because something makes you dizzy does not mean that you would automatically change your mindset on the consumption of these animals. Just because drugs is harmful, that does not mean everyone stop taking drug and abusing drug, ladies and gentlemen. Why is this more likely to happen? Because awareness and education can only be achieved if the society wants to believe on state's principle and stance. The problem is your policy only disharmonized relationship between state and these communities, like individuals that live in rural areas that believe rhinos is cancer cure. Why? Because this policy is deemed to be a policy that goes against their culture, against their belief. The fiction that exists under your policy makes all your education counterproductive. They refuse to listen to all your education and awareness because they seem culture is to be a counter-narrative towards their belief. We think this is harmful. But even if, in the best case scenario of the world, people do change, we're still not okay with that policy. Why? Because the change is not worth the trade. Meaning to say that in the expand or in exchanging the mindset of these people, we must sacrifice animal rights. We must physically engineer those animals. We think that leads to my final argument issue is the original physical of these animals more important than the risk of being poached? Yes, because it's nature that we want to defend. We prefer a world with less rhinos, assuming the worst case that could happen under status quo, more than a world with pink rhinos. Why? Because the reason why we're trying to protect the endangered animals is so much because we want to help future generation to see them, at the same time to ensure ecosystem stability. Let's analyze how the policy ensure these two things. Can the policy protect the authentic nature for future generation to see? Well, not really. Well, the modification of their skin color is an act of violence that is committed on animals without their consent in the name of protection. The change that your policy is making is morally abhorrent. Why? Because now our future generation would see pirate version of rhinos. Look, I prefer looking at pictures, man-made structure of dodo bird more than looking at a live, dangerous, all pink colors dodo bird. How is it supposed to be nature preservation? The conclusion to this is your policy does not help our future generation at all. Modification is only justified when that act upon consent, like dyeing your hair, like coloring your nails. The difference of this to your policy is your pink poison modifies animals like rhinos without their will. So that really means human decide how animals should be. Human decide. Ladies and gentlemen, the conclusion to this debate is very simple. Let us not pass this policy because it does more harm to status quo, human, and especially animals, and we've never been able to oppose.
Let's understand that humans cannot quantify the pain at which an animal suffers. Let's also understand that humans cannot make decisions for animals because the intention of animals cannot be measured. Given that those two circumstances necessarily exist, let's understand then how government has necessarily been disallowing these principles from continuing. Before we go really into that, let's take a look at the major contradiction that existed within government side. So the first thing they told us was oh, look, what's going to happen is we need to allow these rhinos to be manipulated biologically because we want to allow them protection. That will suddenly involve change within the community. Therefore, a lot of people are willing to endorse more change, like building more sanctuaries or providing more protection. But this just necessarily means that if all these innovations take place, then your ability or the fact you change them biologically already becomes counterproductive because security is no longer required. Which one is it, guys? We need to see that consistency within their case. But even conceding to the fact, let's assume that they're going to go with better security instead of them being secure on themselves. How is this necessarily harmful? We told you how these are animals that are generally incapable of making choices or defending themselves. In these circumstances, how is it then better for poachers to necessarily be able the other side of the house, allow for the possibility of poachers to continue poaching, and we tell you why that's extremely harmful. The only analysis provided to us as to why poaching will stop is number one, a deterrence will exist. yes, we concede to the fact that a lot of deterrence may exist to individuals who do care about nausea or do care about diarrhea. But a large majority of people don't. And in these circumstances, how are they on the outside? It's a lot more harmful because they're able to do so. But secondly, they told us like, oh look, people will stop poaching because people are going to be aware of the scenario on the grounds and therefore they want to stop. This also means, ladies and gentlemen, that they would endorse education that's not necessarily relative to begin with. It's not effective. It doesn't change people because not everyone's going to have access to like pink to be able to join flea markets and understand how poaching works. We tell you that it's not mutually exclusive under their side. We tell you how education can still happen under ours. But more than that, ladies and gentlemen, we tell that the trade-off of our education is one that does not risk the life of rhinos, is one that does not debilitate the ability for society in general to understand how rhinos were necessarily were within the previous days. But more than that, ladies and gentlemen, we must draw the line. We understand to a certain extent that sure, humans do play a role as survival, as part of the apex family, try to control, try to provide protection for animals in those circumstances. But where do we draw the line? The line is drawn when humans biologically mutate animals. That's exactly why we don't let animal abuses happen. That's why we don't allow animal mutation to happen, because we draw the line at which humans provide protection animals. We concede the fact that humans do have a responsibility, but is this the responsibility that they're exercising? We tell you, not really. The disability for rhinos to continue being rhinos is when humans exceed the line and when humans cross the borders at which they must respect animal rights. In those circumstances, ladies and gentlemen, we told you why it's far more important to government for governments to remain stagnant or stance in how they protect animals, because that just means people on the ground are willing to appreciate the efforts that the government put in protecting animals, not allowing animals to roam free and kill poachers after they're dead. Ladies and gentlemen, opposition have never been prouder to protect animals.
I don't see how injecting an animal with chemical that prolongs its life is abusing an animal. The point of government's case is to prolong the life of animals, and it's been something that we've already been doing in status quo. It's an extension of state policies. That's why side opposition cannot come up here and tell you that this is an abuse of how animals function. Poaching is an abuse of animal rights. The countermeasures that we place upon animals shows the dire need for us to internally protect animals. It shows the state that we are in and the situation and how it become critical. And that is how we educate individuals on the ground. So I'm going to look at the three most contentious things that side opposition told us, because there was not much. One, they told us this caused a lot of logical leaps in between. Number two, they say you alter animal nature and that is harmful. And number three, they say consumers will still continue to consume and that is bad. This is the three contentions which we don't think are logical. So that's the first one. We said we escalate poaching. Why? Because it becomes a race between governments and poachers to see who can get there first. It is true. We can't inject every single rhinoceros, but we can inject the majority of these endangered species. That is already something that is productive, meaning we can reduce the pool of rhinoceroses that are being poached, reduce the pool of these rhinoceroses that are being endangered. And logically, that also means we can guarantee the safety of these rhinoceroses. Because if we can guarantee the safety of some, these rhinoceroses, a species that is no longer endangered compared to their paradigm. When side opposition agrees status quo is failing, when they agree that rhinoceroses will continue to be poached, conservative mindsets will continue to exist, but they continue to choose to do nothing. Sure, poachers might be faster than lightning to get the last one or two rhinoceroses are not chemically injected. But what win is it for them? We can still protect 300 rhinoceroses which can continue to live and continue the continuity of that particular species. Even if some animals die as a result of the carelessness of the government, that can still be mitigated for the continuity of the existence of others. Then they said Considering the supply decreases, the price will increase. Good, meaning when the price increases for the last rhinoceroses on the earth, individuals will be deterred from buying it because of the financial incapacity they have to do so. You make it harder for individuals to purchase these things because it's just too expensive for them to continue to do. Isn't that something more productive under our paradigm? So as a conclusion to this first contention, poaching might escalate. The result is still different. Individuals will have lesser to poach, lesser animals to harm, and animals to danger, and that moral and physical win for the continuity of this species. Secondly, will this reduce consumerism? Because the contention from them that people will still continue to eat even if they know they suffer pain. Sure, this will happen for a minority of individuals who are insane. Individuals who continue to consume these products will understand the effects are counterproductive and can harm their health and well-being, which means we can reduce the number of people who consume these items. But even if we give credit to this argument, at best, we still reduce the number of people who consume rhino powder. We still reduce the number of people who purchase elephant tusks at the end of the day, because as long as we reduce a single person, they still able to win for that government, because that is still one rhinoceros, which is less poached. But lastly, do we affect ethnicity of the animal? The argument is simple. The comparison is not between fake rhinoceroses or real rhinoceroses. The comparison is between the existence of a rhinoceros which is protected and no rhinoceros at all. Because people might not be able to admire the beauty of these animals, and the comparison on your side is that people won't be able to admire these rhinoceroses at all.
Hey, dude, I was joking.